So on the test side, we often have seen that the problem lies on the approach mentality that we use to start the automation effort. Because the biggest mistake I usually see when we are, the usual, what I see the biggest mistake is when we are asked to convert the manual tests into automated checks. If we do that blindly and just convert that into automated checks, and we usually the manual tests will directly correspond to web tests or UI tests. So if we convert all of that in automated web tests, it will give a big number of tests that will take a lot of time interacting with UI, and it's not the best way to do things. So you need to focus on a layered approach. You need to use multiple test types that, when added up, will validate what we need instead of trying to validate everything on the web layer. Another thing that really can cause flakiness on the test side is rely on the test order. And I've seen this happening sometimes, because relying on the test order to get the job done is never good, because the test must be independent, and the results of one test cannot be used in another. And if you follow this simple approach of trying to have independent tests, you will see that it will improve how you can do things. And of course, having independent tests will allow you to run them in parallel and will save you a lot of time for sure. The data of the test is really important also. In my previous company, we used to fetch data from production, and we need to mask that data, to shrink that data, to put that data into different environments in order to have valuable data for the tests to work with. But it's not that easy, because data sometimes is not that easy. It's not picking up that data and pushing it up to different environments. Well, if you have the same capacity of environments, it will, but because you need to shrink it and the data have dependencies between them, it's hard sometimes to, well, if you are in an e-commerce site, to extract orders, to extract the product of those orders, to extract the prices and the sizes of those orders, when you are just looking at raw data in the database, and the database masters are just trying to shrink that and put it available on your development. And also, masking sometimes does not work that well. If we have to mask, I don't know, the user, and you have to mask the user in the login, the user in the orders, and do all of that connections back. If some of that fails and your tests start failing because of it, it will be bad for sure. And one that is the only one that can, or that I'm willing to give and to tag the tests as flaky, is poor code quality and poor code quality of the automated checks. If you are building automated checks, remember that code is an art, and the artisans that are behind it need to understand the good standards, need to understand how you do code right, that is maintainable, that is reusable, and that is reliable. So automated checks are also code, and you need to have best practices in place in order to have the best tests in place. And the most common mistake that we have in this automated checks in the web layer is waiting. Because if you are not actively waiting for an element to appear in order to interact with it, you will probably fail. Sometimes it won't. And this active wait sometimes is not just the fact that you are adding a waiting for a determined element to arrive, but it's also that you need to understand how you are searching for that element if you're using XPath or anything like that, and understanding what's the best way, because sometimes XPath is so heavy in order to parse all of the DOM of the page, that will take so much time that sometimes it will just stop working because of it. So you need to be fast. You need to be, and the way that you find it, if you rely on the structure of the DOM, that will change for sure. It will not be maintainable. But I have a lot of other things to say, and about poor code quality. But we will see how to address it a little bit afterwards. Lack of collaboration is one of those, because if you are just in a team that are just tossing the production, the release to the test side, and the testers and development team are not collaborating, are not talking to each other about it, we will see that the test that the quality team is putting forward sometimes are the possible ones, are not the optimal ones, because sometimes we will really appreciate if we'll have an ID on the web in order for us to catch those elements in a unique way and in a reliable way. But if we don't talk with development team to have those, probably we will hack a way of making that work that will rely on a lot of maintenance. And sometimes there are more tricky things. So we are into the realm of testability. So how testable is your application? Have you talked about it with your development team? Because sometimes when you are going through, I don't know, an authentication flow in your web application, and you see that the only way to authenticate a user is you need for all of your tests to do authentication on the web and then do the test. If for some reason those tests start failing on authentication, you will see, I don't know, that the heading to the basket is failing, when in reality the login is the one that is failing, but the tests that you have built rely on the login in order to do the rest, and this is really misleading. So why not talk with the development team and start talking about how can we do this without the UI? Can you have an API, for instance? And it happened to me. Can you put an API available for me to do the authentication through the API and then just do the interaction on the web page in order to add to the basket? Things like that that had the testability will enhance the way that we do tests and reduce the flaky behavior of the tests.